welcome everybody to our monthly meeting for September 2025. Geez, the summer has gone by really fast, it seems. For the agenda today, we're going to start by talking about what most people refer to as the EV sales mandate. Can you go on mute, please? And we're going to talk about why we need it and what you could do about it. So I'll repeat some content that I presented to my MP and to a few other people, and then we'll do the news like usual, and past and future events. We have a few events that have shown up on the calendar that you'll want to hear about, and then we'll go to the roundtable. Okay. So let's start off with, so this is the presentation that I did to Marie-France and others.
Who's Marie-France?
Marie-France alone is the MP here for Orleans. So we're not Blackburn anymore.
No,
But,
not here.
yeah, it's changed. She used to be the MP for here, but they changed the writing. Anyway, so I'll start by talking about the electric vehicle market status throughout the world, and then talk about Canada. So if you want to get good information about EVs and what's happening in the world, Bloomberg New Energy Finance has got this electric vehicle outlook. They've got one every year, and they've got really, really interesting data. They're very good with historical data. You'll see later that some of the forecasts, I think, are a bit conservative, but we'll talk about that later. So passenger cars, they're expecting this year 25% more than in 2024, and will be at about 26% market share. Buses, 43%. That's pretty high, right? And 2 and 3 wheelers, 45%. So some of you may know that there's been a lot of activity in the 2 and 3 wheeler space in places like India. So India has mandated that by 2035, all 2 and 3 wheel transportation devices, I guess, will have to be electric. Okay, so all of them by 2035. That'll make a huge difference for them because these are mostly, if not all, 2-stroke engines that spew lots of nasty pollutants. Vans and trucks, 8%. We're seeing a lot of trucking activity in China and in Europe, and I'll just talk about trucking for just a few seconds so that you're a bit more up to date on what's happening. So this, I'll give 2 examples of 2 different trucks that are available today in Europe. Okay, so this is the Iveco S-E-Way Arctic. Okay, it's made for cold weather. Got a range of 600 kilometers. It's got a battery warranty of up to 10 years and 1.2 million kilometers. So if there's anybody who thinks that the battery is a problem, this should solve that problem, right? So
It's that 600-kilometer range while pulling all.
yes. Yes. Let me talk a bit more about that with the next one. So the next one here at the bottom is it's a Mercedes e-Actros 600. So this is from Mercedes website. They say it has a 500-kilometer range. But the guy that we'll talk about after, the electric trucker, he gets 650 kilometers of range with the same truck. Okay. So, and the interesting thing to note here is that it charges in about 30 minutes. Okay. So for those of you who know something about batteries, it's the cell that matters. It's not the battery, right? So if you have twice the number of cells, it's going to charge just as fast as long as you have a charger that can push enough power to the battery, right? So on the right-hand side, you see a picture of Europe, and all those dots. That's a picture of an application that this guy, the electric trucker, is developing with some other people. And the dots are all the charging stations that are specifically for trucks. Okay, so you see there's a lot of them already in Europe. He hasn't spread that to North America yet, so I don't know what we have in North America. But anyways, it gives you a good idea that there are lots of charging locations already. And if you want to see more about that, go on YouTube and look for electric trucker, and you'll see he describes the trips that he does, and it's quite interesting to see what he's able to do. If I could, there we go. So this is an example of a trip he did a few weeks ago. He went from northern Germany to Gibraltar. okay, 2,600 kilometers. He did the trip at the same time as one of his colleagues did the same trip with a diesel truck from the same company. It took about the same amount of time, okay? In Europe, after 5 hours of driving, you have to take a 45-minute break. That's plenty to charge. And they have to obviously, I think they could drive up to 10 hours a day or something of the sort. So there's lots of time overnight to charge the truck, right? And by the way, the guy who was driving a diesel truck, when he was in France, his diesel was siphoned out of his truck. So the diesel was stolen. But you can't steal the electricity out of the battery, right? So anyways, if you're interested in this, I would encourage you to go and look at start these up. There we go. Okay, so let's go back to cars. So these are figures from 2024, and of course, Norway is leading. 2024, 92% of new cars were EVs. You see, Canada's at 17% there. We're a bit lower this year. Talk about that a bit later, but that gives you an idea of what's happening. China is above 50%, and we're seeing a lot of other countries moving rapidly. So there we go. So if you look at the share of the fleet, okay, so this is the share of the cars on the road that are electric. Norway, again, these are figures for 2024, 32%. Okay, so about a third of the vehicles on the road are electric in Norway. And everybody else is a bit behind there, but we'll catch up at some point, right? But the point here is, if you look at the next slide, I often get the question from a lot of people who are concerned about the impact of greenhouse gases and all that. About what are we seeing in terms of impact on consumption of oil, right? So I looked at found some data for Norway for diesel and heating oil. It doesn't seem to conclude much. That being said, only a portion of the cars in Norway were diesel, and the trucks have not yet started to be available in large numbers in Norway. So that 2023 number could be a mild winter that caused that, right? It's pretty hard to tell. But gasoline, though, from 2016 to 2023, not 2024, we saw a reduction of 22%. Okay, that's statistically significant. Okay, it's not just an aberration. So we're starting to see an impact on consumption. So
The scale on those graphs is
Yeah.
weird.
okay,
Great
It
Scale
is.
is weird.
Especially
It
the
is
top
weird.
graph.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it's-
100.
Yeah, what it's doing is it's focusing on the top part, right? So yeah, the scale is a bit weird, but that's the scale that they had, so that's what I used. Okay, so I'll blame them. There are references at the bottom of the slides there if you want to go look at the data yourself. So if you look at passenger EV sales and shares, so if you look at this is from Bloomberg NEF, and so they've got up to 2020. Well, we're at 2025, right? So this is still an estimate, 22 million vehicles sold this year. That's probably going to be pretty close. But if you look at their forecast for up to the year 2030, that's a linear forecast, right? We've discussed many times before that a linear adoption rate does not exist. That's not the way people adopt technology, right? But the point is, though, they're expecting that out of the 80 or so million cars sold every year, about half will be electric by 2030. So when I look at this, the lesson I take is it's going to be more than half. Okay, this is for me, the floor of what I could expect. Now, if you look on the other side, that's the it's still the share, yeah, share of vehicle sales. So for some reason, they have China peaking at 80. I don't understand that. It doesn't make sense, right? But you look at the other numbers, they think that Canada is going to be at around 40% by 2030. The availability standard was supposed to set that at 60%. We were estimating more than that. But anyways, a few other tidbits. So Thailand is actually ahead of the US. The number I saw for Thailand is 60% of new cars are electric in Thailand. Ethiopia has banned the sale of gas cars, the importation of gas cars. They don't build any, so you can't import a gas car into Ethiopia. And Vietnam's at 40%. Okay. So I have a note about Canada here. So I think we're gonna be higher than 40% by 2030. And I'm gonna go zero here. Why would China stop at 80, right? It just doesn't make sense that they would stop at 80. Now, one of the things that's been happening in China that is going to drive the demand elsewhere. So these are essentially what it's doing is it's comparing the price of the gas car to an electric car. And you see that in most categories in China, the price of an electric car could be as much as half or more, or half or less than the price of a gas car. Okay, so the problem, one of the problems we have here is that the initial purchase price is somewhat higher than what it is for a gas car. So we're similar to the US, more or less, and I'll show examples in the next slides. But the point is, China is at the point where we should be in a few years. Okay, so if China is able to make a car for essentially half the price electric versus gas, we'll see that. Now, one of the things to note is that in China, they're, I'll say, a bit more reasonable in a sense that there are a lot of these cars that are relatively short range cars, or what we would consider short range. So 200-kilometer range type of thing, which in reality is more than enough for the average, the average use of a car. But here we insist on having more range, so that makes the car more expensive, right? The bottom line, though, is we should see that happening elsewhere. Now, I use an example, and those who were at the Carb Fair heard me talk about this quite a bit on the weekend. If you compare the XLT F-150 to the Lightning version, so if you look at the doors, the base XLT here on the left has got only 2 doors. Okay, the Lightning comes only in 4-door. There's no 2-door variant. Okay, so if you compare the 4-door XLT with the 4-door Lightning XLT, we have a difference of about $6,000. Okay, which is about 2 years of gas with a pickup truck, maybe less. Right. Another comparison I did is from a TCO perspective, the CAA cost calculator. But there's a link at the bottom here. So I did a few examples just for illustration purposes, and compared a Camry with an Ioniq 5. And yes, if you use a Camry, a hybrid Camry, it's a bit less expensive, but the Ioniq 5 is still much cheaper. Now, I have criticisms of the CAA cost estimator because if you look at the maintenance at the bottom there, it says that the Ioniq 5 could cost more than the Camry for maintenance. How could that be? Right? There's no oil changes, no right. So, so the CAA is overestimating the costs for the electric vehicle. And on the left-hand side, you see an example for 10,000 to 15,000 kilometers a year. It's about $1,500 less to run the Ioniq 5. Right? So over $100 a month. In fact, because of the maintenance and all that, it's even more. And I'll talk about the price of electricity on the next slide, which is exaggerated also. If you look on the right-hand side, that's an example of a 25,000 to 30,000 kilometers. And so you see there a $2,700 difference in annual costs, right? So that's $200 a month. If you take into account the maintenance thing and the price of electricity, it's more like $300 a month that you save driving a Ioniq 5 instead of a Camry. Okay. Huge amount of difference, right? Now, the other stuff with the cost calculator, this is the detailed cost breakdown. Just wanted to point out that the average economy is a bit high, but also at the bottom, they have the cost of electricity at 21 cents a kilowatt hour. I did some math before I was in trouble over rates, and my average, including admin fees and taxes and everything, was 12 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay, so that overstates it and makes the EV look less good than it really is. In terms of environmental costs, the calculator has the GHG emissions you could expect based on the province you're in. This is for Ontario, so 200 kilograms for the Ioniq 5, over 3 tons for the Camry. Okay. And for those people who you always hear, well, what about Alberta or Saskatchewan and places like that where they have lots of coal or, well, Saskatchewan has got coal, but or lots of gas and all sorts of other stuff. So if you look on the right-hand side, that's Alberta, and the bar graphs are reversed there. So the ionic 5 is about 3 or 4 times worse than Ontario in Alberta in terms of greenhouse gases, but still a lot less than the Camry. If you look on the right-hand side, that's Saskatchewan, which is the worst in the country. It's twice again as much, but it's still a ton a year less greenhouse gases. Okay. So, but that's based on the cost calculators, and I'll assume that those estimates are reasonable, right? Now let's talk about Canada and what you should be telling your MP. So these are some quotes here. The first one is from the union, so Lana Payne from Unifor. Essentially, what Lana is saying is that if Canada wants to have an auto sector, we need to move with the times. We need to electrify the production that we have, okay? The next 3 quotes are from Sam Hirsch from Environmental Defense. He's saying something similar. Also, he's saying that with the introduction of less expensive Chinese models in Europe, that Renault and Stellantis in particular have been offering more affordable choices. So if we did the same thing here, maybe that would push manufacturers here, including Stellantis, which we'll talk about later, to actually produce and sell vehicles that are more affordable, right? And again, there's an issue of jobs at risk because if the rest of the world is electrifying and we're not, regardless of what's happening in the US, we're going to be left behind. Okay.
Raymond.
Yeah.
I'll offer a rhetorical argument here. So we want to let BYD in to apply pressure, and that's going to magically force the North American automakers to make more cars or more EVs. Well, we already have the South Koreans who are killing it. We have the Japanese who have some, but like everyone in this room knows Japanese. Yeah. Like we already have competition for them. How will the entry of one more country or one more maker, how will that suddenly change the problem?
The Koreans aren't anywhere close to as cost competitive as the Chinese.
Yeah, so I'll cover that with an example with using Ford in a couple of slides, okay?
Okay.
But very, very good point. So you have probably heard me say one of my favorite sayings is don't ask a barber if you need a haircut, right? And if you think about that, there's a lot of meaning in there, okay? There's an inherent conflict of interest. So my point there is that if you ask the auto industry, they're probably the worst people to ask about the future of the auto industry. Okay, they don't see the forest for the trees. They're stuck in their predicament, and they're very much like Kodak was when the digital photography started to happen. They actually invented digital photography, but they did not manage the transition, ended up going bankrupt. Agfa Photo also went bankrupt. And someone in a weekend mentioned Fujifilm. So I looked it up today. What they did is they diversified and they did other stuff. So they're still an ongoing concern. Never went bankrupt. Okay. But anyways, Kodak faced with this transition, which was a transition that was much more difficult, by the way, because the business model changed completely, right? With film photography, you made all the money at the back end, whereas with digital, you make money selling the camera, right? You can't make money afterwards, contrary to what Kodak thought. But anyways, so the auto companies are in a similar situation, and I could tell you that I have personally lived through this. There were at least 3 times where my old employer went through major transitions, including from on-premises to the cloud, where when we were there, we were looking at this transition, and it looked really scary because we didn't know what things would look like, right? Would we still be able to make money? Would we still be competitive? Would we still have jobs and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's a very uncomfortable situation. There's no denying it. So it's not an easy thing for the auto industry. So transition is very hard on people. In the case of the auto industry here, from a technical point of view, the transition is not really as bad as it's being portrayed, because what you're doing is you're taking just the powertrain, replacing it. All the rest of the car is the same thing, right? So a lot of the experience and the knowledge that they have, over the decades still applies. It's just the powertrain that changes. And so in the spirit of don't ask a barber if you need a haircut, Ford, they claim they lose money on EVs. What they've done is they've created a separate division to assign costs to that division. And my contention is they've done that to make it look like it's costing a lot for the transition. Why? Because they want to influence the government to make it easier on them by reducing regulation and by providing subsidies and all that kind of stuff, okay? If Ford is losing money on EVs right now, if you look at the cost of goods sold of making an EV with battery prices today, that's saying that they're losing money. Either they're horrendous managers or they're lying, one or the
Well,
other.
it's because they're including the R&D cost
Yes,
as well.
yes, but that's creative financing, right? So what they're doing is they're amortizing the R&D costs on a very small number of vehicles, which artificially makes it look like they're losing money, right?
And probably the cost of building their factories as well, which
Yeah.
isn't how they do the accounting for their other vehicles, or maybe they do, it's just that the R&D is already paid for.
And there's more
Their ICE
volume.
vehicles, there's more volume, the factory's already paid for.
Yeah. So on the other hand, GM, they claim they're making money on their EVs. Why would GM be able to make money and not Ford, right? So I don't believe them, is the point. So transportation is going electric. Remember, this is for a general audience, right? The US is really a laggard. If you look at numbers just about everywhere in the world, the US is really a laggard, and we shouldn't follow their example. We should follow the leaders, right? And we have lots of potential to provide what's required in the supply chain to make batteries and all that, right? I already talked about heavy duty trucks. I won't talk more about it, but cost is going to drive that transition. And hydrogen, forget about it, right? We've had many discussions about that. Here, I can go a bit fast because there's a few things that are a bit of repetition. But so what happened is here in Canada is that the subsidies changed dramatically. If you were a Quebec resident, before January 1st, you would get $12,000 rebate. Okay. On January 1st, that rebate was reduced by $3,000. And then thereafter, I think it was February 1st for them, their fund ran out of money for the $4,000. And at the same time, the feds ran out of money for the $5,000 they were giving. So we went from some people getting 12,000 to getting nothing, right? So that caused a problem. It caused a problem in the rest of the country that the $5,000 went away. So that's a great part of the reason why sales are slower than last year. A lot of people knew that subsidies in Quebec in particular would change. So they rushed to buy in the last quarter. That inflated the numbers for the last quarter. And the lack of subsidy has deflated the numbers for since then. Right? So anything else here? Okay. So the uncertainty is causing some problems because it reinforces the negativity. So sales are artificially low. And anybody like some politicians who think that EVs aren't the thing, it gives them more ammo to argue against subsidies and mandates and all that, right? And my contention is canceling subsidies would be less damaging than not saying when they're going to come back, because we still don't know when they're going to come back. We were told they would, but we don't know when, right? So we need to announce them as soon as possible and get on with it. So look at the availability standard and why do we need it? What is the intent of the standard? Well, the intent is really to force manufacturers to provide product. And we're going to go through a bunch of examples that show that. So we have a real big supply problem. There are a few models available. We'll talk about that a bit more later. But I was researching Ford inventory lately, because we need to bore some vehicles for events for one thing. But also because I just wanted to check to see what was happening, and Canada Ford, 0 EVs in inventory, not a single one, okay? Campbell Ford, which is supposed to be the largest Ford dealer in Eastern Ontario, they sold the 2 last Lightnings that they said they had before the event we had 2 weeks ago, so we couldn't borrow a vehicle from them. I checked today, they had 3 Marquees in stock, no Lightnings in stock, okay? Barrington Ford, though, from which we borrowed the Lightning for the 2 weekends, they now are up to 75. So about a month ago, I checked, they were at 75. Last week I checked, they were at 57. They're back to 75. A mix of Marquee and Lightning, okay? Lots of stock, and they're selling well. I've talked to them, they're selling quite well. Jim K, they've got 4 out of 121 vehicles are electric. Okay, not very many. Sterling, 7 out of 142, and there's some 2024 models. To me, that's an indication they're not trying very hard to sell them, or they don't know how to sell them because they should be gone by then, right? Dealers, they sell us an inventory, and it's clear that some dealers, Canada Ford in particular, has never shown an interest in selling EVs. Way back when the Focus Electric was on the market, I happened to stop there and ask them about it, and essentially it was as if the thing didn't exist, right? So anyways, other issues that are happening is Toyota, they only sell the BZ4X in BC and Quebec. So if you're an Ontario resident, you go to a Quebec dealer and you try to buy a BZ4X, you cannot buy it. Tony Graham spoke to them. They wanted to bring some BZ4Xs to their dealership, which they could sell to Quebecers because they do sell a lot of cars to Quebecers. Toyota said, too bad. Okay. So, you can't meet a sales target if you're not selling stuff, right? Okay. So all of that is holding back things, and we had a supply problem, right? Softening the targets rewards laggards, right? And punishes leaders. So the people who are trying to meet the standard are being punished, and the ones who are dragging their feet are being rewarded, right? And any business will push back on regulations here. I'm talking about companies like GM, for example. So GM's doing well in the electric business, but they will push back anyways because any company does not want to have regulations, right? So they'll do that naturally. It's not because necessarily the regulation is bad for that particular company. Okay. So we need a national program. So manufacturers, they price their vehicle by country. Okay. Why do they do that? Because here in Ontario, if the price is lower in Quebec, we could go and buy in Quebec and bring it over. The dealers here would not like that. Okay, so they have a uniform price across the country. A question?
I'm just one point back to your supply. One of the things that we are focused in, kind of problem here is things like Kia. My wife would like a new Lancer Kia Soul, and she wants a replacement. Well, they're saying that the Kia EV4, may be available in the first half of 2026.
Mhm.
But like, this is a great car that was available for years, and it hasn't been available for almost 2 years. We either get a used one or wait another year for at least or 6 months for the same thing. Because the Bolt there is out of production for how long there. So you have these great vehicles that often come in and out and aren't available.
Or are available elsewhere and not here. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. They're available in Europe and not here or wherever.
Yeah, we'll cover that in a few slides. Okay, so bottom line is they have one price for the whole country. And this creates lots of problems for them because they have to figure out with the same price, how do I sell them in BC and Quebec and not elsewhere? Okay, so you think about that. It causes a problem for them, right? And Toyota's solution is they simply don't sell it outside of BC and Quebec, which is a bit crazy. So if you're a loyal Toyota fan, and there are lots of those, too bad. You can't get an electric vehicle, right? So, so having a national policy will eliminate those types of problems. My contention is that manufacturers are not serious about selling EVs. We talked about it a bit, but we'll go through a specific example with Ford. So Ford, they have two consumer EVs, right? They have the Mach-E, they have the Lightning. They do have the E-Transit, but the E-Transit is for commercial stuff, right? But in the consumer space, they have two products. The last one they came out with is the Lightning 4 years ago. Okay. 4 years ago. If you're trying to sell EVs, trying to meet a target, you should be providing some product, right? If you look at Stellantis, Stellantis, by the way, in Europe is selling all sorts of interesting EVs. Peugeot and other brands they have over there are selling tons of EVs, and it's working quite well. In North America, they have the Fiat 500e, which is built in Europe. They have the Charger Daytona, which is a $100,000 specialty vehicle, right? That is not very affordable. And the Jeep Wagoneer is similar. It's a $90,000 SUV, right? It's not for everybody. So they don't have anything for the mass market, right? Okay, so they're vehicles. Volkswagen, they have two models, the ID3, the ID4, and the ID Buzz. We've talked a lot before that if the ID3 was here, we think it would sell really well, right? The ID7, which was sold in Europe, never came here. So there's, other examples there. Toyota, said that before enough times. Honda, they have this $12 billion plan to build a plant or a bunch of plants in Ontario to build EVs and build batteries, right? They decided to delay that because of soft sales. Okay? They don't build any EVs if they sell in North America. How could they have soft sales if they're not even building them? The only EV they have in North America is the Prologue that's built by GM. Okay, so are they really making an effort or not? I don't think so. Mazda's another one where the MX-30 was really a failure. And Nissan, well, it's actually one of the things that came up with Nissan lately is that when the new Leaf is introduced, they will remove the area from American. Okay, so are you really trying to sell them or not, right? GM, I say they're the only serious incumbent. Of course, there's the full electrics that are serious incumbents, right, or serious players. GM's got like 12 models available right now in the market. 4 Cadillacs, 5 or 6 Chevys, 1 GMC, then in the Hummer, and anyways, a whole bunch of models. So they've got a fair amount of variety. It'd be nice if they had some smaller cars though, but pretty good variety, right? So if we talk about Europe a bit, I already mentioned that the ID3 is available in Europe. That's a picture on the right-hand side of an ID3. Very nice car. I've seen some myself in person. Very nice car. Will sell really well. Nissan has had the ENV200 in Europe for at least 5 years now. They sell the NV200 here in Canada, the gas version, but they refuse to bring the electric version here to North America. They claim that it would cost too much for them to certify it for sale here, and the market wouldn't be big enough. Okay.
Mark, how much the ID3 looks like a Bolt to me.
It's a hatchback. It's a really nice car. So much nicer in my opinion than the ID4. Sorry, Ryan. But anyways, so they're both of them, and I've talked to the guys from Nissan in person, and they've said that the market is too small for them to bring it here, right? So because it costs too much to get them through the process with Transport Canada. So my contention is the vehicles, if they're safe enough for Europeans, they're safe enough for us. And actually, I would say that if they're safe enough for the Chinese, they're safe enough for us. It might be surprising, but the Chinese are very, very picky about safety. And you might have heard that they just issued some regulations about door handles where you had to be capable of opening the door from the outside, right? So there's some door handles like on the Model S and X that you need power for them to come out. So they've implemented some regulation to to address that problem. So contention here is that we should allow European EVs in Canada, not the gas cars, just the EVs, okay? So again, example with Ford again. So like I said, they have two consumer EVs in North America, right? Haven't introduced any new EVs in 4 years. The next EV they'll introduce here is a small pickup truck with their new process that they've just announced in 2027, or at least the 2027 model year, so at least a year away, right? Now, if you look at what they have in Europe, they have at least 4 vehicles that would sell really well here. They've got the Puma, that's a very small car. You could argue maybe that one wouldn't sell here, fine, okay, there's 3 others. The E-Transit Courier is similar to the ENV 200. It's a small van that would be great for plumbers, electricians, and that type of delivery, that type of use. They have the Capri. Capri is similar to the Mach-E, and they have the Explorer. Okay, the Explorer that we have here, but not the electric version. And they're making a Bronco EV to sell in China. Okay, not here. So if you look at the bottom there, that's what the cars look like. At the on the right hand side, that's a Mach-E, and you see the other ones are not that small, right? There's no reason to think they would sell well here, and given that Europe is they've got safety standards. Really, the only thing that I think would be required is to make sure that they have the J3400 plug, right? Now, if we talk about tariffs, we have 1% tariffs on Chinese cars, and there's retaliatory tariffs on canola that are problematic. So it looks like they're going to reduce the tariff in some way, shape, or form. What I would advocate for is that they do the same thing as what Europe has done, have a tariff for around 30%. That'd be enough to make their cars competitive and bring enough cars to push the incumbents to do better, right? And to accelerate the electrification. And the US tariffs, it depends on the day you ask, right? So currently there are no tariffs on cars coming from the US. Okay, there's none at the moment. Okay. But that could change, right? So if you want to accelerate adoption, we need price parity in all segments. One way to do that is to increase supply, right? And how could they drive lower prices? Well, the mandate, so require, then if they have to sell a certain percentage, they're going to find a way to sell them. And that's through mostly pricing. So making lower price vehicles available to start off with, but also offering good discounts to compete, right? Subsidies will also help for the consumer anyways. It will help to make it cheaper and having more choice. So if we have European EVs and Chinese EVs, there'll be more choice, and then we'll be able to buy these faster. Now, this is a bit of an aside here. The government is looking at nation building projects, and they contend that one of the ones that they should be looking at is to have mostly a heavy duty charging network across the country. You saw the map earlier with Europe, how many locations they have. We should have the same thing here. There's lots of reasons for that. Coaches now, Volvo just announced coach. Now it's not, they don't build the coach, they build the shell. I guess it's like the skateboard for an EV for coaches, and they have one that's got 700 kilometers of range. Okay. More than enough for all the bus tours that certainly I've been on. So, and of course, light duty, we need more charging. So having a good, community pancake network would be great. So the recommendations that we made, so reinstating the subsidies as soon as possible, or say that they're not going to come back, and continue the mandate. As it's currently structured now, Quebec, you may have heard Quebec yesterday or last week, they modified their target for 2035 to match what I have here. But anyways, they're saying in 2035 that the target will be 90%. They don't have a target for 100%. Now, if you think about that, by the time we reach 90%, it'll be game over. If you look at what happened in Norway, once they got to around 80%, manufacturers started to remove gas cars from market because there wasn't enough demand for them, right? So I expect the same thing would happen here. If we want to prevent some people from getting some money that we don't want to get money for political reasons or whatever, we could exclude the pure electric manufacturers, right? In fact, why should they be rewarded for doing what they would do anyways, right? So we could, that would be an option. Increased funding for charging infrastructure. Now, I talked about having, heavy duty, high-speed charging, but also MURBs. We talked about that earlier, that with multi-unit residential buildings, we have a problem where people can't charge at home. So, and having some more money to do that would be very useful. With all the condos we've talked to, the biggest issue is that first initial investment to get things going. That's the real kicker, right? So you're spending potentially $50, $100, $200,000 for the first car. It's very hard to justify that, right? So having some funding to help with that would be great. So for European EVs, there is some talk about integrating the standards between North America and Europe. But regardless of that, what we're recommending is that they at least have a moratorium for EVs only, not gas cars, EVs only, so that we have more variety. And again, as long as they have the J3400 plug, no reason to think they wouldn't be great for here. And other recommendation, if they're going to put tariffs on US cars, that they should exclude EVs. Why? Because there's a few EVs. The Lightning is built in the US. Kia and Hyundai have plants in the US, and the Ioniq 5 in particular was being shipped from the US. The ID4 was built in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we want those cars to be able to come regardless, right? We should lower the tariffs on Chinese EVs. Talked about that a bit before, right? And potentially eliminate them over time, right? And this here is a bit of a off the wall, left field thing. What Transport Canada has done is they've emitted some temporary regulations, and essentially what they've said is for ferries, that they should follow European guidelines. Well, the problem is there's lots of European guidelines, and BC ferries have decided that the European guidelines mean that if an EV is damaged, if it's been in an accident of any kind, they will not allow it to be put on a ferry. Okay. So for those of you who know BC a bit, you probably know that there's some islands where there's no place to fix those cars. And now there's no way to get those cars from the islands in question to where they could be fixed, right? But the reality is with LFP batteries, there's really no concern. With other batteries, the thing hasn't burned within 24 hours, it's not going to burn, right? So they should allow them to be ferries. Now, in the Maritimes, they've done something slightly different. They've interpreted the stuff completely differently. And what they do is they identify the EVs and they put them in one common location so they know where they are. Okay. So Transport Canada should actually emit some regulations if they want to, but get rid of this craziness that's preventing us from transporting these. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Does Europe have an EV mandate?
So does Europe have an EV mandate? So the way it works in Europe, what they're mostly doing is they're regulating the emissions, and they're reducing the average fleet-wide emissions every year. And the only way the manufacturers can meet those reductions is by selling electric. They can't do it with gas or diesel powered cars. Okay, so that's how we do it.
Isn't that wasn't that how it was here?
No.
No?
No. Well, so here there was a CAFE standard that were matched with the US. Okay, so that was a fuel consumption standard. So the average fleet had to meet a certain number, but it wasn't aggressive enough to drive EV adoption. So here, what the the sales, whatever, I always forget what they call it, but the sales mandate essentially, it was based on numbers. No, it wasn't straight numbers. There was allowances for PHEVs for a certain amount of time. There was also allowance for cars that were sold this year would count towards next year. So there's lots of lots of ways for the manufacturers to meet the 20% that was supposed to be there for next year. But it was a numbers-based thing. So similar to what they have in Quebec, in BC, and in California. Okay. Any other questions?
Raymond and Steve.
Yep.
Yeah, just a comment here. I thought that was an outstanding presentation. You raised the acceleration of EV adoption in countries like Ethiopia and Brazil and China, and at the same time, the stagnation of EV adoptions in Canada, the United States, and the long-term implications of that are incredibly damaging to the automobile sector here in North America. And it just goes to show you the effective and relentless anti-EV messaging that goes across the political spectrum here in Canada and the United States. And the people who do not want to have EVs are very, very good at that messaging. And that's my comment. If you want to respond to it, I'd like to hear it.
Well, the only response really is to agree. Now, the techniques are using, and actually the PR firms are using for this, are the exact same techniques and PR firms that were used by the tobacco industry 40 years ago to try to convince people that smoking wasn't bad for you, right? Now, you brought up Brazil. Brazil is a very special market because they have lots of sugarcane-based ethanol, and they use lots of ethanol to power their cars. So they're a bit different, but yes, they are adopting lots of EVs, as is Mexico. Japan's another whole other ball game. Japan is a laggard because of the hydrogen thing. It's still.
Yeah, they're very proud people, the Japanese, let me tell you, and Toyota is the #1 car manufacturer in Japan, and as goes Toyota, so does Japan.
Yeah, but the danger I see is that at least I'd say probably at least two of those manufacturers are going to disappear soon if they don't get with the program. They're losing their market share in China, so all of the non-Chinese manufacturers are losing their market share in China, but the Japanese in particular. So if they're not going to have product that they could sell throughout the world, they're not going to last, right? So
I totally agree.
any other questions, comments? No?
Yeah,
No,
Raymond?
Yeah.
In the chat, Pam put in a link to the feedback for the mandate, that the government has a feedback page. And your presentation's got a lot of good information. Is it possible for you to email that information from your presentation to us so that we can put it in a letter to the government for the mandate justifying our opinions about this so that they can have it on record?
Okay, so what I will be doing is I will be putting the presentation up on our website. So if you want to go there, you'll have all the text of the presentation, okay? And I would encourage everybody to give feedback and talk to your MP and talk to anybody else who'll listen. Because right now what's happening, and actually in Quebec, what happened there is they talk to the auto industry and they talk to the dealers, okay? Well, what are they going to say? They're going to say, get rid of this regulation. It's a pain in the butt for us, right? Maybe they should have talked to some other people, right? So make your voice heard, right?
Yeah, to me, it's really obvious that the dealers are pushing back to the manufacturers that they're going to lose all their money in their service centers, and without the service centers, the sales don't justify their high income.
Yeah. Now there's two things that are in our favor. One of the things is that the Chinese tariff is there's a retaliatory tariff on canola, right? So that's putting pressure on the government to reduce that. So that is one thing in our favor. The other thing in our favor is that the Auto Dealers Association of Canada, so this is a dealers in Canada, have themselves said that we should bring European cars here. Okay, so there's some part of the auto industry that's pushing for that to happen. So that makes it easier for it to get through. Okay.
Okay, good, thanks.
How was Mary France's reception? Like, was she listening? Did she roll her eyes a lot? Like,
Reception was quite good. Ryan and I went to talk to Bruce Fanjoy and to Jenna Sells. And there's a possibility that we'll get some time with other politicians to talk about this. So there's an auto caucus in Ontario in particular that meets regularly, and it would be great to talk to them. You'll know if that happens, we'll tell you for sure. Okay, so any other questions, comments? No? Okay. You're next.
Thanks, Raymond. Let's look at a few stories. Is this hooked up?
It doesn't work to me. It works sometimes just with the arrow. That works also.
so no.
Sounds good. All right, so this survey went out and is starting to show a bit of a warm up in terms of European sentiment on Chinese cars, compared to a survey that was taken in 2024, where only 31% of potential buyers expressed willingness to buy Chinese cars. That's gone up to 47%, which is now higher than the percentage who would consider buying an American car. And trust in Chinese goods has gone up while Americans gone down. Although a lot of these respondents kind of would only go for it if the car was cheaper. Well, fortunately, they are. A lot of you may have heard of this, was a pretty big news story, but Trump decided to shake things up for Hyundai and went and raided their EV factory, basically, new one they built. They found some visa violations, and people in Korea were super duper not happy about it.
That's a mild way of putting it.
This was a fun story. So, you know how the Dodge Charger Daytona EV has a big exhaust sound? So a driver was driving it and got pulled over and got a ticket for their exhaust being too loud. But it kind of just seems like the cop was just being a dickhead, because they didn't have the sound like on maximum even. Apparently the driver was driving in like eco mode or standard driving mode or whatever. And the driver alleges that the cop thought it was his car because he was next to another car that actually had a loud exhaust. So then the cop pulls him over, and then he tells the police officer, yeah, this is an electric car, like it doesn't have a muffler, like it doesn't have exhaust. And the officer just says, I don't want to argue with you, man. Okay, it's not argument, but anyway.
Of course.
Yeah, he'll get it taken out in court. So you may have heard Raymond talking, well, he actually did directly reference this, but federal government scaling back targets. Quebec did the same thing to a level that's not totally crazy. I mean, they essentially went from 100% 2035 down to 90. I mean, realistically, if we reach that point, there's no going back anyway. And it does, the 90% figure includes plug-in hybrids as well. Plug-in hybrids, at some point, the cost of your gas drivetrain exhaust transmission exceeds the cost of just putting more batteries in. So probably won't remain relevant for a much longer time. For pickup trucks, maybe. Ottawa actually stated they were considering getting rid of the tariffs on Chinese EVs, so pretty good news. They'll probably be doing it to have China get rid of their tariff on wheat from Canadian farmers. Wheat and/or canola. There may be considerations to get commitments from the Chinese to build factories here to help the local job situation. That would make a lot of sense, and hopefully they do that as well. People say it could undermine the auto industry. I think not putting pressure on the industry to innovate and compete also hurts it in the long run. It's just really a long run, short term debate that you want to have, but we have all the resources and technology here to succeed if we actually try.
Wouldn't building a factory in Canada help support the Canadian auto industry and not destroy it?
Not the legacy auto industry.
But it's about jobs, right? And it'll provide jobs.
It's about the jobs.
New coach from Volvo with nice, really nice spec sheet. Up to 720 kilowatt hour battery, which they say will give you 700 kilometers. Considering the type of mileage you usually get in Class 8 trucks, that's probably conservative actually. You probably get more than that from a battery that large. Pretty cool to see these products go be. Some patent filings from Rivian showing them doing some interesting things. Some active aero stuff going on in the back to help aerodynamics. Stuff to do with things they want to overlay data on videos that you're recording with the car. Software patents for better route planning and feedback, navigation adjustments. The most interesting one was they basically created a design for a car that doesn't have a 12-volt battery at all, like not 12, not 24, not 48, like no low voltage battery at all. It still has a low voltage battery system, it still has a low voltage rail. So how does that work? I actually read the patent. It was like 300 pages. Well, I didn't read the whole thing, but I poked around in the actual patent filing because it was very interesting. I was like, is this article like misquoting? Like what's going on here? So what they propose to do, for technically inclined among us who are curious, right now in a typical EV, you have contactors or relays basically that isolate the battery when the car is turned off. And then you need your 12-volt battery to energize those relays and bring the high voltage battery back online when you turn the car on. The way this system works is it still has those relays, but there's actually two connections going into the high voltage battery. There's one that comes out and goes into the relay box. And there's another one that just goes directly to a DC-DC converter that steps down to 12, 48, whatever volts the low voltage system uses. And it's just permanently connected. And the system's designed to be really robust and, fail safe. If like something explodes inside, like it'll just cut itself off basically. And so you have a system that's just always hooked up to the high voltage battery and can supply low volts. And then that can close the switches to energize the rest of the HV system. Con of this is that when you're powering a DC-DC converter, there's a bit of an overhead. So just for it to be on, even if there's no amps being drawn, like it costs a bit of energy. So I don't know if they're really going to go through with this, because it would basically mean that there would always be some idle energy consumption on the truck. They could design it to really minimize that, making this like milliwatt levels. If they, make that 12-volt converter system modular and power it on in stages and stuff like that, it would be cool to see. Eliminate one more part. Yeah.
Why is that an act?
Well, everything gets patented.
Yeah, but that's an obvious.
That's like 90% of patents are something that's obvious.
We played with that with my truck 20 years ago.
And then you end up writing 300 pages, and it makes it sound really complicated and confusing. But like what I just said is basically the patent.
Yeah.
And it's like one paragraph. Like
You've got some prior art, go and validate it.
first ever EV charging highway sign. Yeah,
EV charging.
there's words on the screen there, but I don't really remember too many other details. It's on a sign and more signs are coming. Cool.
I mean, there's signs on the side of the 401 that there's EV charging. So this isn't the first, I mean, it might be the first,
This is Tesla specific.
oh, the first Tesla.
I guess
sign.
that's-
Oh,
First one, you look at the gas stations, it says a gas station like hell, right?
okay, so it's in with the, all right, all
The
right.
only ones I've seen say
Okay.
charging and nothing else, right?
Yeah, say the brand.
Congratulations, Tesla.
All right. That's it for now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Any questions on that? No? Cool. Okay, so let's talk about recent events that we've done. So we've had a few what's some coffee, like usual, and then oh, the Festival de Montgolfier. Did anybody go to that? Anybody sign up? No? I know that there were some of the guys from the Avec that were there, but I myself, I didn't go, but anyways. So there was a climate march on the Saturday, and the same day we had a Taste of Wellington. And that went quite well. We had the lightning, and we ended up using Kim's car also because the lightning we got had the base power package on it, so only 2.4 kilowatt. And we couldn't start the two bouncy castles, right? So what Adam and Kim did is they played around and figured out a way to get them to go and keep them.
Can I?
Yeah,
Sure.
I want to give that explanation.
By the way, there's an option with the Lightning, the bigger package with more power is an option. It's $1,200 and it's 9.6 kilowatts that it gives you. That's what gives you the 30 amp 240 plug and two 20 amp 120 plugs, right? But this one didn't have it.
Yeah, so it's a really fun and stupid story. So I get there with the lightning, and they've got two blowers, and so we start the one. Actually, sorry, they've got two bouncy castles, and they had three blowers. So I was like, I can't do three blowers. I might be able to do two, but I can't do three. They're like, okay, well, we'll take the second one off. This bouncy castle will be fine. So we turn that one on, and it's going and playing. So that's great. Woo. All right, let's do the second one. And we plug it in, and the whole thing shuts off. Ah, dang it! Can't do that. Okay, so let's start the one, and then see if we can start the other one. No, can't do that. Okay, so let's start one, unplug it, start the other one, and then unplug it, and then plug them both in. No, can't do that. Turns out it was never going to work because one of them was 13 amps and one of them was 9 amps, and that is more than 20 amps together. So that was never ever going to work. So Raymond comes over and I'm like, oh, Raymond, we can't do this. And he's like, okay, don't worry. Kim's got his Ionic 5. I'll send him over and we'll plug it into the Ionic 5. I'm like, okay, great. So the 13 amp one, that was going to fly on the Ionic 5, but I'm like, the 10 amp one, that should work fine, right? So we plug in the 10 amp one to the Ionic 5. Yeah, no, won't start because of the startup current. So in the end, what we had to do was start up the small one on the F-150, get it spinning, unplug it, run over to the Ionic 5, plug it in while it was still, coasting. And then the Ionic 5 was able to start it and run it for the whole day, and it was fine. And then we plugged in the other one to the F-150 and ran it off the F-150. So, yeah, we have to, as we do more events, we know, you and I know this already, as we do more events with bouncy castles, we need to be very aware of the startup current and pretty much can't do it with an EGMP car, which is very sad because EGMP is objectively the best technology.
Objectively. Of course.
Objectively.
But the other lesson for me is to specify to Brian Ford to get the one with the bigger package.
And ask how many blowers and what amps they are. Yeah.
So anyways, but that was interesting because the reason we ended up going there is because of the fun fair here. It's the same people that were renting the bouncy castles, and they told the organizers there to contact us for this. And anyways, but by the way, the picture on top is where the rest of us were. We had two locations and the traffic was amazing. There was a lot of people, a lot of people. The organizer said that he was expecting 20,000. I wouldn't be surprised if it was that much. The one thing that would have been better though is if it would have been on the other side of the street, because most people were going on the sunny side of the street. We were on the shade side of the street, right? So maybe that's something we could change for next year. But we talked to a lot of people, so I think it's an event we want to repeat next year. So this last weekend, we had the carp fair. And just like before, we did a booth with cafes. And it was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
The location wasn't ideal again. Anyways, we'll have to reevaluate for next year. I get the impression that if you want to have a good location, you have to show up at 10 o'clock when they start the installation. Because when I got there at shortly before 3 o'clock, they had no spot for us. Okay?
At all.
At all. So that means that they didn't pre-plan where you would end up, right? Which I thought would have been the case because every other event, often we'll get a map in advance of where we're going to be, right? But for some reason, Carp Fair didn't do it that way. So we ended up in a place that was less than ideal, I would say. And for some time on the Friday, we had an 18-wheeler parked in front of us. And so there, on the other side of the street that you see there were some chip trucks or food trucks. The truck was between us and them, so nobody really saw us, right? So anyways, we got them to move the truck eventually, and that was better. Saturday was really good. Lots of traffic Saturday. Sunday was not quite as good. But we did talk to quite a few people, and the F-150, we used it to power the lights. We had a whole bunch of lights, and we had a coffee maker that we would power with that, and cafes had a solar panel and battery to make popcorn. So
Which they had to switch the lightning when the battery ran out because
Yeah.
they didn't have enough power from their solar.
yeah, so they ended up using
That
for
works
some of the popcorn. Yeah. So, but anyways, the lightning, as usual, really attracted attention, and I think there's some people that, based on our discussion, would buy a lightning and wouldn't have, or much closer, anyways, to considering it, right? So it was a good investment of time. So let's look at coming events. Our next meeting, October 27th, will be here again. Kilowatts and coffee. So we have one on the 4th and 11th. Now we have an event on the 18th, but it's in the afternoon. So what I'll do is I'll figure out where we could have a kilowatt and coffee in the morning, and then go to the event. So the event is at the Riverside Church on Riverside Drive near Moose Bay. So if we have a cars, kilowatts and coffee around there, those of us who go to the event at 1 o'clock could just go from one to the other, right?
Yeah.
So that way, at least we have the kilowatts and coffee. So we'll post that on our website. So October 18th, we have Charge into Fall, a road trip. So we're going to do the same thing as we did last year. Last year we did a poker run. This year we're going to forget about the poker part. We're just going to go for a nice drive. Hopefully the leaves are still nice by that time. And more details will be on our website. For Joe Patat appears to have closed down, unfortunately, where we went last year for lunch. So we're looking for an alternative, but we'll have that figured out by that time. And we will we're asking people to register, so we have numbers, especially for the people who will be eating with us, having a lunch with us. We want to know how many people are driving and their passengers. Yes.
Where do we register?
It's if you go to the event on our website, there's a link there to register. So Brian put that in. I noticed it today. So, and I registered.
Nice.
Earlier you were saying to have a cars and coffee before the 10 a.m. But it's
It's not this event. It's
well, the
next-
25th.
Sorry,
The
yeah,
25th.
mistake here. It's the 25th, not the
Okay.
18th. Sorry about that. Sorry. Yes.
So, sorry, what's the big picture? What's this road? I don't know what this event is about.
So last year we did a poker run where we did a circuit where you would stop at different places, get a card, and right, and at the end, whoever had the biggest hand want a prize, right? So this year we're doing the same thing, but without the cards. We're just gonna have fun and drive around and see the nice leaves. Okay?
It's an excuse to get together and drive around.
Get together and have fun.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're considering something for people who have volunteered this year, also as part of that event. Okay, so that's the 18th. Then the 25th, this is the one that's in the afternoon. Sorry about the confusion. So Riverside United Church, this is an event specifically for women. So the women in the group are interested or are invited to help us out there. You probably know that we've been trying to figure out why women tend to buy less EVs than men. And this is an opportunity for us to talk to some women and convince them that it's a better choice for them, right? So so we'll have a presentation and we will do some test rides, not drives. Doing test drives is becoming increasingly difficult, but rides, if people want to take, want to come with me or anybody, I'm sure most of us are okay to do a ride, but doing a test drive is becoming more difficult, especially October 25th. We don't know what the weather will look like at that time. It could be cold and snowy and probably not, but we don't know for sure, right? And that is it. So so if you're not, new for 2024, maybe we should change that, right? So if you're not a member, I would encourage you to sign up. We're always looking for a bit of extra funding. For those who don't know, most of our funding goes to insurance, unfortunately. And some of it goes to registrations for events like the Carp Fair. We have to pay for that. We split the fee with cafes, but we have to pay for that, and had to pay for some of the tickets for people coming in. So, and of course, our YouTube site is there, and we're gonna put a few other videos in the next couple of weeks. If I could, you sent me some videos, Adam. I need to put those up there. There's a few others I want to put there.
And Henry's is less timely now.
Okay.
Did Henry's get put up?
The one about the psychedelic treatment.
Yeah.
It's part of the meeting thing though, but yeah, we should put it there separately because it's a nice compact thing to put there, right?
Yeah.
Just like you had done the one on the Tesla app for non-Tesla users, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, I didn't. So that was part of the meeting. I didn't make that a separate short, but I tried to send you. I don't know if it succeeded or not, but I tried to send you 2 videos.
Yeah, I just haven't had time to put it
okay.
up there, right? And there's actually another video I'm gonna put up there. There's a guy named Kim Johnson that some of you may know. He did a presentation to the. It's a bit to the side, but he did a presentation to the Nuclear Safety Commission. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and it was about the new reactors that are being proposed for Ontario. And essentially, what he was saying is, it'd be cheaper to do wind and solar. Why aren't you doing wind and solar? And you're concerned about security. Wind and solar is not as pretty safe. And nuclear has all sorts of risks, right? So why are you doing this? And one of the answers, this is pretty interesting. One of the commissioners answered to him. So he was talking about the cost and, so much cheaper. Why wouldn't you do it? And the answer was, looking at the cost is not in our mandate.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Yes. So I'll put that up there. It's a short video, 11 minutes, I believe. And I think that is it. So for those who are on YouTube, watching it later on YouTube, this is it. So if you want to see the roundtable, which is a really exciting part, right, guys? Yeah. So you have to be in person or online during